Okay, good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar with Laura Rogers, who is a SharePoint expert, speaker, author, and educator, and a longtime friend of mine. And Laura is going to talk about PowerApps today. My name is Agnes Molnar. I am the CTO of Search Explained, and please join me and welcome Laura.
Hello, hi everybody. I'm Laura Rogers, and we got a lot of content to talk about today, so I'll go ahead and just dive right in. First of all, a little bit about me. I have my own SharePoint training company called IW Mentor. I've been an MVP for about 6 years. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and you can read all my no-code SharePoint blog articles on wonderlaura.com. I've written about 7 SharePoint books over the years, and you can find me on Twitter, WonderLaura, and my new company on Twitter is at IW Mentor. All right, so today we're going to talk about PowerApps. PowerApps is fairly new. I think by now that most of you have heard of it. Every now and then I come across people that have not heard of PowerApps, so I am going to be doing some introductory content in here as well as a little bit of nitty-gritty, semi-technical. So first of all, I'll do an intro as to what PowerApps is. I'll talk about a couple of examples of a couple of PowerApps that I've created that I'm going to use as examples in the demo. I'll talk about concepts in building PowerApps and a little bit about connections and admin, because that is a ton of content. So it will be more around building and being in the Power App, and the management stuff will just be a little bit towards the end because, again, it's only an hour. Just FYI, at my website, iwmentor.com, I am planning on having more in-depth PowerApps training out there, so just keep that in mind and follow me for more news about that. All right, what are PowerApps? If any of you have been using InfoPath over the years, you may have noticed Microsoft's kind of pulling that away, sort out of our, trying to pry it out of our hands and saying InfoPath is a antiquated technology, it's going away, it's a dead technology, and PowerApps is Microsoft's new replacement for forums and apps and a lot of the things we used to do in InfoPath. How can we find PowerApps? It is a free download in the Windows Store, but we can also go to web.powerapps.com. PowerApps are only available in the cloud in Office 365, and they're not an on-premises solution. PowerApps gives us a great visual interface for layout design. We can design multiple screens and controls as we're building our app. And we can connect to and integrate a whole bunch of different other online services and databases, and this list keeps growing. When we create PowerApps, they can be consumed from a mobile app, so any end user, anyone can just go install the PowerApps app on their iPhone or Android and be able to fill out forms from there, but they can also fill them out on the web and within SharePoint. SharePoint, of course, is one of the data sources that we can use in our PowerApps. So this is just the concept of, PowerApps lets us create desktop size apps or mobile apps so that people can fill them out no matter where they are, so they're on the go. And I'm going to give a couple of good examples in real world situations where PowerApps are a great idea. All right, here are a couple of scenarios. So the first scenario is timesheets. Basically, as a small company, you might not have a big CRM system or a big project management system. A lot of companies I know over the years have just built in project management and timesheet type of things just in SharePoint as lists. So with this concept, you have a list of customers, a list of projects, and a timesheet. And these are just simple SharePoint custom lists that can be used within a Power App so that you can click on customers and projects and fill out timesheet entries from your phone or from this nice pretty form in SharePoint. The other scenario is audits. I have a lot of customers that have people out in the field, they have branches, they have audit checklists, they have things that need to be done on a routine basis, where it's really nice to be able to have this as a mobile app, because they have people that travel around to all of their different branches and locations, and they need to be able to quickly and easily get together the information they need, quickly be able to check some things off, maybe even take some pictures, and be on their merry way and move on to the next branch. So, where before you might have all these stacks of paper that they carry with them, and then they have to carry it back with them to the office or something like that, with this mobile app, they can just quickly check a few boxes and submit that information. All right, so I'll go ahead and demo the end user experience of a couple of these apps, and I've created these both as phone size. Right now, the app creation experience is you either create the app as a phone shape app, vertical or horizontal, or you create the whole app as a more like a tablet size. So both of these I created as phone size, so I'll demo what they look like from the end user perspective, and then I'll demo what it looks like just out of the box within a list in SharePoint, going ahead and clicking a couple of buttons to create an automatic Power App off of the data in that list. Alrighty, so first of all, here is this concept. I have this is for the field audit. It's just a simple SharePoint list where I have branches, I have some status, just words, and then I have the audits that happen. And so each audit is going to happen per branch. And then I'll go ahead and open up my other one. I've got my customers and my projects and timesheet. Just as you can see, these are all just pretty simple SharePoint custom lists, and they just happen to be in the modern view in here. All right, so those are the two concepts. So what does it look like to fill out a Power App? So first of all, I'll go ahead and I'm just going to go to a web link that I have, and towards the end, I'm going to show you how you can obtain the web link, and I'll show you kind of how Microsoft provides it out of the box for that experience, to be able to go, quickly create an app out of a list, and then for the end user to be able to get to that app, and then how to just, get this URL. All right, so here's the concept. The first thing you're presented with in this app is your list of branches. This is the data straight from the SharePoint list. This first shows all branches, and I can refresh the list. I can click this little filter button, and this is what takes me to those different statuses that I was looking at. So for example, I can click on pending, and that shows me just a filtered list of pending branches, and then I can go back and click all, things like that. And then when I want to perform an audit, I can go to one that has not been audited yet, and those are the red ones. I have those some conditional formatting in here. And I can say, all right, I need to go audit the Mobile, Alabama location. So look at that. It automatically shows me the address and shows me a embedded map of where that location is, just based off of just an address field in a SharePoint list that just has the address written out. And then I can start my audit. Now think about, kind of expand and think about all the different types of things and checkboxes and things like that that might exist for an audit. What I was trying to do in this example was just give some simple different field examples of some different types of fields that you can have, just to be able to show, different ways that it can look. So I can say that's my productivity. I can give a number here. Were there any safety issues? And so if you had a lot of yes, no's, you could have those as a bunch of this type of control all down the page. You can picture, a page full of those. And then I wanted to be able to show the ability to do some numbers and some totaling. And so I put some currency in here if they're estimating some sort of values in their audit. And these are my notes. So several different types of controls we can have in here. And then I'll go ahead and do my signature. Pretty cool. And I could clear my signature out. And I was messing with that functionality right before I started, so I messed up that button. But there's my little signature. And then I can review. This is just showing me the display data of the information that I just filled in. And then when I submit my audit, it submits it to the SharePoint list. And this is just kind of a best practice to use when people are using mobile apps, is just to give them a notification letting them know, different things like that they're doing. So I just created a whole screen in here that says the audit has been submitted, and it takes you back to the home page. And I can refresh the list to be able to see now the ones that have already been audited. The ones that have already been audited, I actually have some different logic in here. When I go to one that's already been audited and try to audit again, it just shows me a list of all the previous audits. So this is doing a lot of cool logic behind the scenes that we'll be able to dig into. So that is the end user experience for getting around in these audits and audits and the different screens that we have. So next, I'll go in here and go to my other app. I've got one called, I've got a lot of them, don't I? Let's see. And this is also on my phone. So I'm not going to necessarily share my phone on the screen because it looks exactly the same on my phone as it does on the screen, because it's what you see is what you get when you're creating these. So what I did was I just opened this up basically in design mode, but in order to go ahead and use it as an end user, I'm just getting there a different way. I can always preview it. So I've got my list of customers. This is a SharePoint list, and then I made this cool little, as you hover over things, they pop out. I can go to a customer and be able to see these are the projects. So it says the name of the customer and says projects. So I'm looking at a list of projects. And then I've even got some conditional formatting letting me know if I've gone over, if I'm getting near the hours available on that project. It's going to show as red. So I can go ahead and do time entry, and it's telling me which project it is that I selected, and I can go just fill out what I did and did some work. And then I have two different buttons, so that if they want to just keep doing more time entries, they can do that, or they can just submit that, and that just submits that item to SharePoint. In this same app, with the idea of, again, being a small company, I stuck a little social thing in here, and you can see this has got my tweets. And this is to basically demonstrate how you can have a lot of different types of data from different places in your Power App. It doesn't have to be just SharePoint. And you can have databases, Azure, SQL, and it's about 100 different types of data in here. So I have just some tweets showing me how many retweets I have for each one. And then I even have the ability to write a tweet from here and send it. And I made sure and built in all this navigation to be able to get back where I was and navigate around in the app. All right, now those were pretty quick demos because that's just the end user experience, and I know you guys want to see sort of the nitty-gritty and how this works. So let's go ahead, and the first thing I'm going to show you is if I just went to a regular old SharePoint list, and you have to be in the modern look here. I went to a regular old list and I can click to create a Power App out of it. This other one that I created with all the fancy branches and audits and everything, I just created it from scratch. I clicked just start from blank, and I did it that way. But you don't have to. You can do it and have like sort of a fast track to have something to start with. So I click create an app, and I'm just going to say branches and click create. So it's going to take a minute to spin that up. So the great thing about the fact that SharePoint has this built in is that, even if you don't necessarily want to use just the exact, just out-of-the-box thing that it spits out for you, it's at least a good starting point, and it's a good learning environment. So you can click around in there and see kind of how different things were done, how some of the commands were done. and be able to take that logic and be able to use it to teach yourself Power Apps. Another good way to teach yourself Power Apps that I've been doing is when you go to create a new Power App, you have a lot of Microsoft templates that they've created just as examples. I recommend going through all those and looking at how they did things, because those are really good examples. All right, so look at what it did. It created a Power App for me. I was just one click, and I can go test the Power App out. So I can see that just out of the box it gave me, this is what's called a gallery, which is a list of things. And it's, I wouldn't necessarily want to have the fields in the same places that it assumed and put them, but I can rearrange those. So when I go to, I can create a new branch this way, which is going to take me to a new form. I can cancel and go back, and I can go to an existing branch and look at it, and then I can even decide if I want to delete it or edit that and change. I'm going to change this branch number to maybe 134 or something like that, and that saves that SharePoint data. And then so they've built in this whole way to navigate around in here. Let's do, what happens if I type main? Oh, that search isn't the fastest. They've actually been working a little bit on just the way that the search functionality works. Actually, by default, they have this tied to what's in the title field. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and just showed you a couple things around the out-of-the-box way that they created that. And then if I want to make this available to everyone, that's one more step that I have to do, because right now it's just going to be available to only me. And so I have to go to this file and choose share, which makes sense, right? That's what we do in Microsoft applications to be able to share things. And it's got one little simple button. They really simplified this. You just click share with org if you want the whole organization, or else you can pick names or groups of people to share it with. So I share it with the whole org, and what is the role of the org? It's just going to be, they're going to be the end users, and I'm going to be the owner, and I can save that. All right, so now I can go ahead and go back to, let's see, I'm just going to exit out of this because I want to go back to SharePoint. I'm just going to go like that. And just go back to here. Okay, so now I went back to, this is the list that I started from, and it gives you this weird little view here. So let me start again, go back to branches, and the way, it is a little awkward, and I will talk a little bit more about this later, but the way that you get to it is it creates a view right here. So this branches view is actually the Power App, and I can click to edit it, or I can just open it here. And then this is the end user experience. Okay, so I do have some more slides about that. So that was a demo of the end user experience in the two Power Apps I created, and then just the out-of-the-box way that Power Apps look. All right, I'll go back to my slides. Again, ton of stuff to show you guys. All right, getting familiar with the interface. So this is the design surface. All right, and then what we have is a few different concepts that are going to be important for you to learn as you're building Power Apps. First of all, of course, you just have the data. What data are you dealing with? It can be SharePoint data, it can be Google Drive, or an Excel spreadsheet, or SQL, or OneDrive. I mean, it has a lot of different types of data. So the data can be one of many, many things. So one of the first things you're going to do is connect to your data and just authenticate to it. Then in here we have screens that I'll go over: screens, galleries, forms, cards, and then your buttons and navigation. All right, first of all, we have the data. And when we are in a Power App and we click the File menu and click Connections, that's where we can see, it'll take us to the web. It'll take us to web.powerapps.com. And this is where we can see all the connections we've created. These connections are actually the same connections we're using across Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. I'm not going to get into Flow in this presentation, but Flow is it's Microsoft's new workflow thing that also uses connections to all these different types of data. So what we need to do is when we click to create a new connection, we just pick from this long list of 100 different types of connections and then authenticate to it. And once we do that, it will show in this list. All right, and then once you have that, you can use those in your Power App. It even gives you an interface inside of the Power App to create the connection from there. So it's going to be a pretty easy interface to be able to get there. And a lot of these, most of these, they don't require code because they're all pre-built and you really just need to authenticate to those things. All right, first we have the data and then screens. So if you're used to InfoPath, then screens are going to be like what we used as views in InfoPath. And screens are just the different things that you're navigating around through in the app. We have a screen for customers, a screen for projects, a screen with a form for new time entry, of course a screen that has all of our timesheet entries, and like in the audit app, I even had an extra screen that I created so that after you submit your app, it goes to the screen and just says, thank you, your audit has been submitted. So you can create a lot of different screens for a lot of different purposes, and then you're going to use little buttons that you create to create the interface that allows people to navigate to them. All right, let's go look at creating a screen. I'm going to open up this is the branches app that I showed you. So this is the one where we'll use, this is the PowerApps application in the Windows Store that I'm using as opposed to the web interface. And to create a new screen, first of all, I can see all my screens down the left side. So let's kind of get familiar with this interface. So down the left, these are all my screens. And then I can click this little ellipsis next to any screen. I can rearrange them, so I can even drag them to move them up and down. I can duplicate one or delete one, and that's also where I can create a new one. A lot of the times when I'm building an app and I want everything to have a more uniform look, I will just duplicate a screen in order to create a new one, just to save some time in creating all these little buttons and navigation. All right, so I already have a form for creating a new branch. I already have a form for looking at audits. I have a form that lists all a bunch of audits that have already happened if that branch has already been audited. So let's say I want to create a new screen to view an existing audit. So I'll say new screen. And when I create a new screen, it puts it on this page, puts it in the middle, just this white background, and it puts it at the very bottom of all my screens, and I can rename them. This little box at the top left, wherever I am in PowerApps, is important because that's what lets you rename not just screens but anything. So I'll call this display audit. And then not only can I rename screens, but as I go through these different concepts like galleries and forums, those are all things that you're going to want to give good, useful names as well. All right, so I created a new screen and renamed it. Let's go back to the slides. Next concept is galleries. And I did write an entire blog post. I think the blog post pretty much has the same title as this slide. Galleries are like repeating tables in InfoPath. A gallery is a list of stuff. You can't edit a gallery. A gallery is just a display list of items from some data source, like SharePoint or any of those other ones that I mentioned. And in a gallery, it will list multiple items from your data source. And you can change what fields it shows as well in the gallery. You could show every single field if you wanted to. It would just be very big items in a gallery. So here are my items. And then it's all very contextual. So just like when we're in any other Microsoft application where we have the ribbon that's contextual, When I click on a gallery to select it, I have a gallery tab at the top with all these different things that I can do with my gallery, like pick a template for it, change the transition, which is the, kind of when you hover over items that makes them kind of pop out of the screen. And those are the different little options I have for the gallery itself. And then the items in the gallery. So I'll go over, I have a couple of slides to describe how you can do this because, just easy out of the box, all you really have to do is type the name of your data source. Like in my case, my data sources are just the same names as my SharePoint list, like customers or projects. So all you really need to have in here is the name of your data source. There are just a lot of different ways that you can slice and dice and filter and sort this data to your liking using these functions. You're going to see these functions in a lot of places in PowerApps. This is definitely a concept, another concept to get used to. It's similar to the idea of creating formulas in Excel, and and these things can build on each other, and you can have nested statements and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So this is just one that's sorting items, and I'll show you a little bit more details here. All right, so this is how I could build the command and several different things and ways I can build this command to show my gallery items. And again, this is all in that blog post I wrote, wonderlaura.com. Just typing projects would just show me items from my data source called projects. Pretty simple. That's all you really need to do. If I want to filter my projects, I have this so that I can type this filter command and say, okay, what am I filtering? Projects. And then I want to filter the projects to only show projects that are related to the customer that I selected in the customer list. So if you remember, the app that I demoed to you had started off with a list of customers. I mean, you click a customer, then it shows that customer's projects. So that's how I can say, I have to say what gallery it is, and then that I selected something in the gallery. So the customer lookup field in the projects list is going to match the item that I picked in the gallery. All right. Another different command I can use is the search command. It shows projects filtered by what I type in the text search box, just the field that I indicate. So I can type the word title, and that will, when I type something in the search box, it'll immediately filter the title field. It's a pretty simple concept. Nothing like all that cool advanced stuff that Agnes does with SharePoint search. Also, another different concept that I can do is have sorting, and I can say, again, what data I'm sorting, and then what column I want to sort by, and that's what's going to give me the ability to have that little sort button that you can click that toggles it up and down, and it's just going to sort it by that one column that I indicate here. You could get more complex. You could have multiple sort buttons across, like especially if you had a tablet size app, you can have multiple columns in your gallery and be able to have little sort buttons above each one if you wanted to. Sort by columns. Okay, first of all, what I'm doing is I'm putting these all together. So I'm not just sorting, I'm showing how all these can be combined to do everything in one big command line. So I start with a sort command, and then the search one is nested inside of it, and then the filter is nested inside of it. So I'm sorting the things that I've searched, the things that I'm filtering, and then here's my data. So that's all combined together. You can get pretty crazy and complicated, but that's how I broke it down for you. All right, let's do a demo of creating a gallery. Go back to PowerApps, and I'll go ahead and do another new screen just for fun, and I will create a gallery of audits. I kind of already have a gallery that has audits in it, but I'll go ahead and do a new one. So one of the first easy things I can do is I can click where it says, basically it says add an item from the insert tab here. And when I go to the insert tab, gallery is just one of the things that I can insert. I have all these really pretty ways that I can insert these items. I can have horizontal galleries and text galleries and horizontal and vertical, and these are going to be really nice to have, especially when you have images associated with all of your items. I'll go ahead and do a vertical gallery. And by default, it puts just this fake data in here. Now, one important thing when you're messing around in galleries and trying to get around in here, first of all, I want to expand this out so it fills up my whole little screen here. And then when I'm working in my gallery, notice if I click kind of down below towards the bottom of the gallery, that's actually selecting the whole gallery, and it gives me my gallery toolbar up here where I can, set my cool little transitions and fun things like that. But at default, it's going to also show me the ability to pick what items I want to show. And then items is actually what shows here in this function box by default. What is the data? So in this case, it can be audits. And it immediately just puts the list of, I've only done 3 audits. It just puts the list of audits here. And this panel down the right is going to be what I can use to determine which fields show. By default, it has just put 3 fields in here, but this is where I can pick which ones that I want to show. So let's see, so heading, maybe I want the heading to be the audit date. And then the subtitle is going to be this next one, and I can make that be maybe my inventory number. And then the next one after that, let's see if I'm going to try something fancy and see if that will work, putting the signature on there. The signature is going to have to be an image though, so I have to change what type of control that is. All right, so then as soon as I pick my data, you can see them listed down the page, but they're kind of ugly. So in order to edit the way all of the items look, I have to select the top item. So see, when I select the top item, that's what gives me the ability to rearrange things. I can change the color of things. I can use all these just kind of basic controls, just like you're familiar with in Word and other programs, to be able to control the way things look. But I can also make it look like columns if I want to. I can add text, and I can put it at the top of the screen. Here I'll show you a couple of examples. So if I just click to insert a text box, I'll just say just a text box like this. I can just type right in this text box and say what I want it to say. Let's see, like that, and move it to the top. You can see this is very ugly so far. I can make it bold. But if I want to make it so that there's text that shows in each one of these little items, I actually have to click inside of that item and then insert a text box. So insert text box like this, and it just put this random value in here. So I can say, I want this to say, and then inventory number could be this little thing. So you can see how you could spend a lot of hours of your life like clicking around in here and rearranging things, right? So you can see you can make this gallery look like exactly like you want it to. You can even make these shorter, so I don't have to have this giant long box. As I shorten this, so you can see all the items in the gallery sort of shorten. So that's a very ugly gallery, but that's how to get started with a gallery by putting, you have some controls to work with. You can add more controls in there. If I have time towards the end, I'll see if I can, make that little signature control render as an image in there. That would be pretty cool. All right, now I am going to go back to my slides. All right, the next concept we have in PowerApps is the concept of forms. This is where people can fill things out and look at things that they filled out. All right, forms. You can visually design your form with cards for each field. When I use SharePoint as my data source and I stick a form on a page, on a screen, it automatically does this thing called, it puts this thing called cards on the form. So what allows me to do is simply click these little eye buttons, these little eye icons next to all the fields that I want to show on my form, and then each field will automatically appear on the form as a card. And I can rearrange them. I can visually just drag them up and down. Basically, whatever order I click the little eye, that's what order they're going to start appearing on the form. And that's just a really just easy out-of-the-box way to do that. Once I, see here's another interface. Once I select a card, so I select this card called customer names, and it's basically this whole box around the label and the control. And I can see that it says card, and it's got a little lock next to it. What I can do with that card is I can do this drop down over here next to that card and pick how I want that to be displayed. You know, maybe it's an edit field and I want it to just display the information, or maybe it's a date picker and I want it to just display the date, or maybe it is a text box and I want it to display as a phone number. So it has all these little pre-built ways, like this one's a lookup field, so I can say view the lookup data or edit the lookup data. So each control, just without doing anything super advanced, has this little easy box you can use to change the formatting of it. All right, let's do a quick demo of creating a form. And I'm going to use this display audit form that I created a minute ago. So to insert a form on a page, on the Insert tab, I have Forms. Now, when you're used to SharePoint, you have Edit, Display, and New. Well, in PowerApps, the Edit and the New are the same thing. Ignore this third one. That is specific to the Common Data Service, and it's new. We're not delving into that. So it's Edit or Display. So I'm going to pick a display form, and then it immediately pops me to this data source equals what data am I going to display. So my data source is just my SharePoint list called audits, and that's what I pick here. So as soon as I pick audits, it pulls me over to this screen that I was showing in my screenshot, where I can click the little eye next to different fields that I want to show on my form. I can pick, let's see, audit dates, maybe who created the item, and I'll just pick a few fields just to show real quick. Productivity, signature. All right, and now this is going to be a display form for an audit. So you can see that's really an easy way to just quickly pick which fields, and you can see that depending on what type of field I select, it's going to give me this drop-down box. Now this is a display form, so it doesn't give me, like with an edit form, you can pick where you want something to be an edit or a display for any given control. So this has a little bit less of those options because it's just a display form already. When you're getting more advanced and you want to do some custom things like change default values, change the way some things look, I have all of these different ways that I can, all these different sort of functions that I can use. Now the way that I can do that is, it's not going to let you mess with any given one of these because it's locked by default. But what I can do is when I start getting advanced, I can go over here and everything's kind of grayed out, and I can click unlock. And then that's when you'll notice that all these different properties down the right side, all the different names of these, border color, border style, border thickness, and all these things match the same. These are the same things that we see in this drop-down box over here. This is just a sort of an easier way to look to skim through it to see what's going on. These are going to be the way that you can do some conditional formatting. All right, that's going to be having to do with your colors. You're going to be able to do if statements and conditions in there. And also with a form, you have to tell PowerApps when you're clicking on the form, you have to tell it what piece of data you want it to show. You have to tell it, like for example with a display form or an edit form, which particular item am I showing on this form? So right now item is blank, so if I preview this it's not going to have anything because it has no idea which item I'm supposed to be displaying. So PowerApps is a little weird when it comes to navigating to a form and filling out the form. And I'm going to show you with an existing form, how I did this. So with branch offices, okay, so I have a new branch office form. So I click the little plus button, have this new branch. So it's just got branch name, branch number, address. I set the status to, I want that to be read only. So I just changed that to just view text, just a quick example. But this is a form. Like I mentioned before, it helps to name your forms. So this little thing at the top left is always going to be whatever thing you've selected, how you can rename it. So I called this new branch form, and I called my, like I name my galleries too. When I select a gallery, I call this branch gallery. It really helps when you're moving around, navigating around in here and creating your logic. So I have my new form, which was only a couple of clicks to create, my new branch form, and I picked which fields I want to show. But then to make it be a new form, like if I just, well, I think I'd already selected something, but let me show you. To make it be a new form, when I navigate to it, I actually need to, in the button itself, not only am I navigating to that item, I have to do this new form command. So I say, hey, okay, I'm going to this form. I need it to be something new, as opposed to editing an existing item, say. So I need it to know that when I get to this form, it's going to be a new item that I'm filling out. So it has to do with not just the form itself and giving it a good name and putting the fields on it, but when you navigate to it, how's it going to, it needs to know what it's doing when it gets there. So if I want to display a form, let's see, I'm going to, when I navigate to this display form that I created, and not only, I need to know which item that I want it to display. So I only have 15 minutes left. I need to go ahead and move on, but because I want to be able to get into some of this cool conditional formatting and things like that. I have time to do that too. All right, so that was a quick demo of creating a form. And like I said, I'm going to be having detailed training on my site with all the intricacies of this. There's a lot to it, right? Okay, buttons. You can use the insert button, insert tab to just click button, and it will put a button on your form. You can also use the insert tab and use these little icons that it provides, which has all these pretty little icons that one of mine here is pretty ugly. I don't know why I didn't change the color of it, but it gives you all these little out-of-the-box icons that you can use to insert on your form to make it look very professional. So if I just click insert and choose button, it'll just be a big rectangle, but I can also use shapes as buttons. I can also, there are a lot of controls, like even text boxes, that if I just use this on select, I can make it be a button. So it doesn't have to be an actual button control. Here are some things that I can do with a button. I can navigate to another screen, submit form information, kick off a flow, refresh data, fill out a new form. And let me go back, and I'll just show you a couple of buttons very quickly that I created already in this Power App. Let's see. All right, so like I mentioned, this one goes to a new branch form. This one simply refreshes. It refreshes both the list of branches and audits from SharePoint. I also made this button so that not only does it navigate to that particular branch's branch map screen, but it also refreshes. So if I want, when I want a button to do several things in a row, I simply put a semicolon in between them. So I'll just type this one out, like navigate, and I can just, if I see the thing that I want to choose, it's the first thing in the list, I can just hit tab, and then I need to pick a screen. If I pick something that's not a screen, then it's going to give me an error. So that's why it helps me when I'm naming my screens to actually put what, what it is that makes sense to me. That I actually should have named that screen branch map screen. Let me see. Branch map. Okay, branch map. And then when I navigate, see, it tells me, just like in Excel, it tells you where in your formula that you are, and I can pick a type of transition that I want for my navigation. Then when I do a semicolon, then I can say what I want to refresh, and it prompts me, okay, which data do I want to refresh? And I want to refresh the audits, close parentheses. So again, it's like actions in InfoPath, except it's, between each action, you do a semicolon. Let's see. Oh, Agnes, let me know if I need to save a few minutes at the end for questions. Let me go ahead and get through the rest of my slides so I can show you some of this conditional formatting too. Okay. Okay, those are what our buttons do. And once we share PowerApps, once they're created, how do users use them? This is a set of screenshots showing the thing that I quickly demoed at the beginning. To create a Power App, you go to PowerApps and click Create an App in that modern list. Not all list types have the ability to do Power Apps, just custom lists right now. And then once you've created the Power App, then to open an existing one, it will be listed as a view. It will look like the name of a view, and you go to that view and click Open. But you'll probably want to just link to a Power App because that's a lot of clicks, and we know end users, and we don't want to confuse the heck out of them. We want to make it easy for them to use this app. We don't want them to have to do 3 or 4 clicks just to get to the form to fill out. That's kind of crazy. So make it easy for end users. What we can do is we can go to that Power App, and in the File menu, we can click Share. And then it gives us a detail screen here, and that is where we can get a web link, and that is where we can directly link people to this app. So I can just, right click and grab that, and then, what can you do with this web link? Use a promoted links list or put it as a hyperlink on your homepage. Just, put a pretty link that says, click here to fill out the blah, blah, blah. And that will open up the app for the end user. So that's just a good tip for you guys to be able to make it simple for people to be able to use these. And also remember that on the Share tab, no one else is going to be able to see this app until you share it with the org. And then when end users install PowerApps on their phone, once they authenticate to your Office 365 tenant, all the PowerApps that are available to them, shared with them, will simply be listed there. And they can click the name of the Power App that they want to start using, and they can even pin PowerApps to the home screen of their other phones. All right, a little bit more about data connections. You can go to PowerApps in the waffle menu, and you can also potentially troubleshoot connections here. And you can see all the connections for both your Power Apps and Flow here. A couple things I've had to do troubleshooting connections is you don't have to mess up your Power App. You don't have to delete any galleries or forms in your Power App if you're having issues with just connecting to the data. All you really need to do is either re-authenticate or delete. You can even delete your connection completely and recreate it and re-authenticate. And then your Power App just simply needs to know, the right fields to map to, make sure you have, it's pointing to that list again. And because it's really just looking at, the Power App's looking at the name of a data source and a field in that data source. And as long as that's in place, then it will function. So, in SharePoint, if we deleted an entire list and we had to recreate it, that would be a lot of work. But in Power Apps, if you have to delete the connectivity part, you could just connect to something else. Also think about taking a Power App and, maybe you have similar lists in, maybe some different places and different site collections in your organization, and you just want to take the same Power App and create, maybe for different people, have connections to different lists that are similar. You could just change the underlying connection and that could be a new Power App, and that could be something to where it's, you know, pointing to a completely different set of data. So that's all possible as well. For the admin of Power Apps, we have, when we go to Office 365 Admin and go to Admin Centers, Power Apps is listed there. And we have a couple of concepts in here called environments and data policies. You actually have to have a certain license for Power Apps to be able to utilize these. They're not just going to be in there in just your free out-of-the-box version. So I'll just go over these fairly briefly. The concept behind environments is if you want to have sort of segregate out your different Power Apps and flows. Maybe you want to have a whole set of Power Apps that's just, you can call it IT, and a whole other set of Power Apps for HR, and you can set different owners and different makers in these different environments so that you can say, okay, this set of users, they can create and edit Power Apps in this particular environment, and this set of users is constrained to this other environment. And that way you can more granularly define roles as opposed to just out of the box where you just create a Power App and decide who to share it with. You can have whole sort of sets of Power Apps. And then the concept of data policies is a little weird. It is, you're looking at all these different types of services you can connect to, and you're categorizing them as business data only or no business data allowed. And that way you can set either business data or no business data as the default for that environment. And that way you can control what types of data people are connecting to. Maybe you don't want them doing silly, frivolous things like Instagram and Twitter, you know, in their Power Apps in there, you can restrict that. All right, let's go ahead and do another demo and get into some of this conditional formatting, because this is really fun. All right, my favorite thing that I did in conditional formatting in here is this. This is the coolest. So I have a list of branches and I have a list of audits. The ones that already have an audit for that branch are going to show as green, and the ones that haven't been audited yet are showing as red. So it's actually comparing the two lists together. How do you do that? So I click on this text box, and then I'm doing an if statement. If not, so basically if this item, this branch ID that I have, this basically just the ID of the branch, does not exist in the audits list. So branch ID is a field in the audits list that says which branch that audit is associated with. So if the ID of this branch does not exist in the audits list, then show it as red, otherwise show it as green. So you can do your colors in two. I want to demonstrate you can do them in two different ways. So you could do the RGBA, or you can just type the word of the color. And so it's a pretty simple if statement, but it's very powerful because it's comparing a value in two different lists, which is up to this point has been a pretty complicated thing to be able to do in SharePoint. Back a long time ago with the data view web part, I was doing, you know, demos of how you could do this data view web part that combines different sources and does all this crazy stuff. So this is the new way that you could do that. Also, for this button, I wanted to, oh, actually, did I delete that button earlier? I think I might have deleted that one and recreated it when I was, yeah, I think I did. I deleted that a minute ago. Oh no, it's not this button that's got the logic in it. Sorry, this button just takes you to the branch map. This button, Start Audit, is the one with the logic in it. So this is the one that if the branch has already been audited, it takes you to this list of all the existing audits. And if it has not been audited, it takes you to the new audit form. So if, same concept, the ID, if it's not already in the audits list in the branch ID column, then go to a new form and, you know, and then navigate. Otherwise, just navigate to the previous audit gallery. This is fun. I spent like 6 hours last night doing this. All right. And then, let's see what other logic I might have in here. This one is the logic for going to a filtered view. If I click on, depending on what I click on, so on select with this button, so it's navigating to, it's just navigating to the branch screen. But when I navigate to the branch screen, my gallery of branches is filtered according to what I selected in the filter gallery. So it's if I selected the word pending, then it's filtering the branches that don't have an ID in the audits list, so you get the drift. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of trial and error, but it's a lot of fun building these out. And then, of course, this word is showing what I, either all branches or the word that I filtered them by. So let's see, I'll go demo this again. All branches, click filter, click audited, and now it says audited branches. And then I can click filter again and choose pending. So that's how I can narrow that down. Now, I learned this from Microsoft's out-of-the-box template called Cost Estimator. I simply opened that up and looked at how they had done the logic. I didn't just open it up and try and edit it and put my data in it, because that's really way too hard. I just looked at the concepts of how they had their logic and utilized a lot of that in here. So you guys can all do the same thing. One more thing, I want to see if I can show the signature when I'm displaying the audits. So I think I inserted an image. Yeah, this item.signature. I'm going to take this item.signature, copy that, delete that, insert an image, and then what image is it? It's going to be this item.signature. Now, all of them don't necessarily have that image. So let's see. Yeah, the signature, they might not all have a signature. I'm not sure. Yeah, no, that was on the fly. That one's not going to work. All right, let me go back to I've got one more slide at the end. And just a little bit of information about how you can find me. And thanks so much, everybody, for coming. And Agnes, I don't know if you wanted to do questions or maybe a couple. There you are.
Yes, thank you very much, Laura. And we definitely have a lot of questions. We've got many of them early in your presentation, and you have already answered many of them. So I just try to filter for what haven't been answered yet. Question from Tom. Is it possible to publish a PowerApp into a SharePoint page?
Yes, now it is. I was able to do that for the first time just yesterday, but I didn't feel confident enough in it to include it in this demo. I did tweet out a link of how you can embed a PowerApp in a Power BI dashboard, and it's the exact same concept. It's an embed code.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
We have several questions about permissions. For example, does the PowerApp inherit any permissions from the parent list?
Whatever permissions the end user has to that SharePoint list, they are authenticating to that list when they're using a Power App. So their own permissions just regular SharePoint permissions will automatically apply. And that applies to any other data sources too.
All right, that's great. Another question, if someone who made a Power App and shared it with the org leaves and you remove the user from the tenant, do you lose the Power App associated with that user?
No, you don't lose the Power App. Flows, that's another story, but Power Apps, no.
No, okay. One more question. Can we use SharePoint as database with large list over than 5,000 lines, or is it better to use Common Data Service?
I would probably recommend Common Data Service. Power Apps isn't exactly the best right now at the large list. They are improving it though. I tweeted out a link just a couple of days ago called Learning About Delegation in Power Apps, and delegation is their concept of fine-tuning it, making it more efficient.
That's great. What about release strategy? like development, test, production environment?
What you can do for dev, test, and production, I'm not a developer, so I've never had to do that in SharePoint, but you can use file save as, and you can have different copies of a Power App, where with InfoPath, it was a real pain to try and do that, because then when you published it to different InfoPath environments, you'd get all this weird column duplication and a big mess. But with PowerApps, you can just have different copies of a Power App, and then within the Power App, you can just connect it to a different data source, like on-premises or dev. I mean, you know what I mean, dev or test.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. Can Power Apps be connected to on-premise SharePoint somehow?
You can create a gateway. You do have to have Office 365, but in that list of connections that you do have the ability to create gateways to your on-premises data.
Okay. And the last question was, how practical is it to use PowerApps to replace a large InfoPath form, like a large order form?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, you could do it. It would probably be pretty tedious, but you are going to need to replace InfoPath with something. So I'm not sure. It does take a lot of time to kind of arrange all the different things on all the pages and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what Microsoft's providing. So.
Yes. Okay, and the last one, do users require PowerApps service assigned to their accounts for them to open the created PowerApps?
I don't think so, but I'm not the best with the licensing and all that. I'm not positive.
Okay. And we've got some question about the recording of this webinar. Of course, it will be available. If you go to searchexplain.com/webinars, you will find it probably the next day, tomorrow. Laura, I would like to say thank you very much for you. It's been a very, very great content, a lot of new things to learn, and
Yep.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Laura.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.